So there hasn't been much movement with the whole Chelsea Manning case, but there's been some movement with the Julian Assange case. So Julian Assange, I think, is still locked up in the Ecuadorian embassy. Recently, the Spanish government helped the CIA and therefore Donald Trump to secretly record Julian Assange and his meeting with his lawyers. They recorded that private meeting that's supposed to be, lawyer-client privilege, but the Spanish government got that recording and gave it to the U.S. government. So that's what we're going ahead and doing mass surveillance on Julian Assange. There's even a moment where there is a woman and a baby comes in, and they were speculating stealing the diaper to get a DNA sample to see if that was a secret love child of Julian Assange. They're just trying to do anything and everything to fuck this guy over. Some torture that they were doing to Chelsea Manning, they were just sitting there saying Chelsea can't exercise, can't lean up against the wall, can't do all this other, they could stand and can sit and can dance, because apparently dancing is an exercise, and there was 2 armed guards that, in a two-way mirror just staring and watching Chelsea Manning. This is torture. This is insane. This is what we're spending millions of dollars for the government to do, to go after the criminals like Chelsea Manning. Chelsea Manning, who told the American people the truth. Chelsea Manning, who fell upon her cross. Chelsea Manning, the hero of this new millennium, the one that stood up against war and in favor of, truth and justice and goodness and decency. Fuck. So Edward Snowden, 7 years ago, 2013, so Edward Snowden has been living in Russia for 7 years. There's 7 years, that's, Jesus, fuck, it's a lot of time. Edward Snowden expected the American people to stand up for his cause, right? So did Assange, and so did Manning. They didn't really look through history, right? Basically, your MLKs and your Medgar Evers, your Malcolm X's, your Stokely Carmichaels, your, anybody that stands up and says your RFKs, your JFKs, anybody that says we need peace and freedom and let's all get along, they get shot in the head. And then there's nobody else on the horizon who takes their place. We're just, without a hero. We're without a people's hero. So, yeah, the American people didn't stand up for Edward Snowden, so he's still stuck in Russia. Chinese government redacted parts of Edward Snowden's book without his permission. So this is some shit that he has to go through, right? He went ahead and wrote the book, The Permanent Record, of which the U.S. government said he didn't have permission to do, and they're going to go ahead and take all the, royalties, and they're going to get all the money for it. So if you, buy The Permanent Record by Edward Snowden, that money goes to the U.S. government. Edward Snowden did get his advance check, so don't feel too bad. He did get some payment, but Jesus fucking Christ. I heard somebody said, well, at least he's allowed to publish it and we're allowed to read it, because if we started censoring ourselves like that, that's when the American people would rebel. Would we? Is that when we would rebel? I mean, we've taken, a lot of shit. A lot of poverty, a lot of war, a lot of police brutality, a lot of unnecessary killings, a lot of shit. And, that doesn't seem to spark us into revolutionary, fervor. So Edward Snowden, because, he's getting fucked over by the Chinese, can that happen in America? Would we get mad about it? In China, he went ahead and did this. He dropped a PDF, a free PDF version online, a free PDF version online that was going to, written in the simplified Chinese. So he went ahead and give the, redacted parts free for all the Chinese, all the Chinese in China to enjoy. Snowden also says that Facebook is as untrustworthy as the NSA, which, I mean, if not Facebook, then what else? Snapchat, Twitter, that's what people are doing. So you have, let's see, Julian Assange. There's some movement with Julian Assange. All these cases are connected because they were truth tellers, whistleblower journalists who told the American people the truth. And, it's less than 2 weeks before the Assange extradition hearing. So there's going to be 2 main hearings coming up. There's one that's going to go on for 5 days, starting on February 24th, which would be 2 days after the Nevada caucuses, which is turning out to be an Iowa caucus shit show. You know why the rat went to Iowa? You know why the rat moved out of sewers into Iowa? Because he said, that's a better shit show than where I'm from. So, Assange. This is the Julian Assange update, okay? February 24th, so that'll be Monday. Then it'll resume May 18th for 3 more weeks. So Julian Assange still, under arrest. He's had psychological damage. He's been tortured. He's been kidnapped, falsely imprisoned by the British government in the name of the global security state. He's in the Belmarsh prison. So we know where Julian Assange is. He's not in the Ecuadorian embassy anymore. He's in the Belmarsh prison. Queen Elizabeth II won't intervene on Assange's case because she says it's a political matter and, she has no moral courage whatsoever. The rank-and-file teachers in Sydney, Australia adopt a resolution defending Julian Assange and Chelsea Manning. Julian Assange is an Australian citizen. So what did he do? An Australian citizen published something on a website in Europe and somehow that's a crime against America? The U.S. government says yes. The U.S. government wants to charge Assange of 17 counts of espionage, 1 count of hacking. Therefore, Julian Assange is facing a maximum sentence of 175 years in American prisons. 175 years! Edward Snowden said he would come back if he was guaranteed a fair trial. If he was guaranteed a fair trial with a fair jury, everything fair down to the T. But we know that that's not how the federal government works. These charges are related to the Espionage Act, so Julian Assange is being charged with the same shit that Chelsea Manning and Edward Snowden are having to face, or has faced. Meanwhile, the criminal-in-chief, Jan Fuhrer, he only had to swat down 2 solitary charges, right? So, impeaching, Donald by cruise missile, here's just 2 charges. Why didn't they put 17 charges on him? You're going to put 17 charges, 18 charges on Assange, and just 2 on, abuse of power, contempt of Congress, both of which he was guilty of, but let's be honest, the trial's not a fair process. The president was guilty, and the Senate covered up the president's crimes. Julian Assange was released from his solitary confinement, but only because of the protest of the prisoners that he's living with. So the only people that's showing any moral outrage are the convicted criminals that's, staying next to Julian and seeing the treatment that he's being dealt out. And then when it comes to the candidates, where do the candidates all stand? Bernie said he was going to, show mercy, but he didn't say outright, like Tulsi Gabbard, that she would drop all charges against Julian Assange. Tulsi Gabbard is better on Julian Assange than Bernie Sanders. Her policy is. Tulsi has a very dull speaking style, but she's in my top 3. Bernie number 1, and Tom Steyer somewhere in there too. So Joe Biden, he said Julian Assange is a high-tech terrorist, right? Donald said that it was an ungrateful traitor. The psychological torture that Assange is getting from the British HM prison, Belmarsh prison, is scrambling Assange's brain. Pete Buttigieg wouldn't give Assange or Snowden or Chelsea clemency. He's troubled by clemency for Snowden, Chelsea, and Assange. He's troubled by it. He says you shouldn't give classified information to journalists. You're supposed to go through the proper channels, such as congressional oversight, which Congress hasn't used its, war powers since World War II. So what the fuck? Go through congressional oversight? Congress doesn't do a good job doing, their oversight. So he did the only thing, they did the only really viable path forward. This is getting some major headlines because Julian Assange, it's the 25th, right? Just what? It's the 17th. So in 8 more days, Julian Assange is going to have a 5-day hearing and then a 3-week hearing in May. And then that's all she wrote. We're going to see what the fuck these, bureaucrats, these judicial bureaucrats in London come up with. Jeremy Corbyn challenged Boris Johnson's seeming acquiescence of U.S. extradition of Julian Assange. Jeremy Corbyn said that the U.S.-British extradition treaty is unbalanced. It's more in U.S. favor, it's not in England's favor. Corbyn said that Assange has only been kidnapped and falsely imprisoned because he exposed U.S. war crimes. He exposed the murder of civilians and large-scale corruption. So Jeremy Corbyn asked Boris Johnson this question: will the Prime Minister agree with the parliamentary report that's going to the Council of Europe that this extradition should be opposed and the rights of journalists and whistleblowers upheld for the good of us all. And Boris Johnson said, I'm not going to mention any individual cases, but it's obvious that the rights of journalists and whistleblowers should be upheld, and this government will continue to do that. Jeremy Corbyn prophetically opposed the Iraq, Afghan, Libya invasions and occupations. Michael Bloomberg didn't, but Jeremy Corbyn did. Julian Assange has been nominated for the 2020 Nobel Peace Prize. Julian Assange says that in general, people don't like war. We had to be lied into the Iraq war. And if we could be lied into war, then we could be truth out of them. David Morales, the owner of the Spanish private security firm Undercover Global. Isn't that, pretty ominous? So Undercover Global, they gave audio and video recording of Assange with his lawyers in the Ecuadorian embassy in London. They're going to steal the baby's diaper. This is what this Guantanamo Bay, Fort Knox, it's fucking Alcatraz. This is, the Jewish concentration camps out of Nazi Germany. Assange isn't a U.S. citizen. WikiLeaks isn't a U.S.-based website. So some Australian typed something on a website over in Europe or Australia or something, and all he could do is pass along information. How is that a crime against us? It's not. He told us the fucking truth. He told us the truth. So, to finish off all the information, April 2019, Lenin Moreno terminated Assange's asylum status. Assange stayed in the Ecuadorian embassy for 7 years. Then he was booted out. Then Assange was promptly arrested by the British. The sexual assault charge from Sweden was dropped. Ironically, the German TV channel ZDF ran an expose on the Swedish politicians who lied about the rape allegation. So the rape allegation is as fictitious as the WMDs in Iraq. Nobody was ever charged with war crimes that WikiLeaks unearthed. The real criminals get away with their crimes. The powerless, the truth tellers, the whistleblowers only get martyred on a cross, and their lives are ruined. Meanwhile, Assange is rotting in prison, Snowden is in exile, and Manning is rotting in prison too, right here in these, 50 nifty good old United States. There's a lot of good things. He released all those secret documents on Peru, so he helped fight the corruption with the Peruvian government. Julian Assange is, democracy is when the government is afraid of the people, and dictatorship is when the people are afraid of the government. NSA has mass surveillance apparatus against all U.S. citizens. Apparently, this Spanish private security firm Undercover Global is even surveilling Assange. Yet the rich and the powerful and the government, they don't. We need privacy just to think, just to have the freedom to our own thoughts. Privacy is a vital freedom that Americans should be outraged because we have lost the right to privacy. The Fourth Amendment says you cannot search me unless you have probable cause. And then you have to say specifically what you're searching for. You need a warrant. But all of America is being searched right now. And Bloomberg's okay with that. The Democrats in Congress voted for the Patriot Act. Pelosi voted for the Patriot Act. So, what the fuck can we do? What the fuck can we do? So that's a Julian Assange update. Free Julian Assange, free Edward Snowden, free Chelsea Manning. Vote for Bernie Sanders or Tulsi. Peace.